right, shalom, shalom, mashbaka. We want to give all praises, honor, and glory to the Most High Power, Abanawi Yahweh. We do so in the name of His only begotten Son, and Mashiach Yahweh Shah, the one who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. Today we're gonna go into a little bit of Galatians. Galatians, main reason, Galatians and Corinthians are two of the main scriptures where people epistles, Christians try to go into to try to debunk certain things of the law. You feel what I'm saying? It's in Galatians, it talks about circumcision, and we're gonna get into why the book of Galatians was even written, the whole reason for it being written, and what he was actually going into, right? So let's grab that. The book of Galatians, and the main thing we're gonna start at is chapter 5. We'll read chapter 5, verses 1 to 6.
The book of Galatians, chapter 5, from the top.
Mm-hmm.
Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherewith Christ hath made us free.
Mm-hmm.
And be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage.
Now, anybody heard how Christians try to break this down? Nah. Well, they try to say that yoke of bondage is the law. That's what they go into. They say Christ set us free by dying, but we don't have to keep the law no more, right?
Verse 2. Behold, I Paul say unto you that if ye be circumcised, Christ shall profit you nothing.
That sounds kind of dangerous, huh? The way it's written, it looked like he's speaking against the law. He's like, yo, if you circumcised, you go ahead and go get circumcised. You know what I mean? Christ ain't for you. That's what it looked like, right? Keep on reading.
For I testify again to every man that is circumcised that he is a debt to the whole law.
And then you hear them say, oh, but if you get circumcised, you got to keep the whole law. You got to keep the whole law, right? Read on.
Christ has become of no effect unto you. Whosoever of you are justified by the law, ye are fallen from grace. For we through the Spirit wait for the hope of righteousness by faith.
Right.
For in Christ neither circumcision availeth anything, but faith which worketh by love.
All right. So when we read this, just reading this alone, off the rip, it sounds like he's saying, don't get circumcised. If you get circumcised, you assed out, basically, right? That's what it sounds like, right? That's why we got to read everything in context. One thing we realize and keep in mind is that the books, the chapters and verses wasn't even added until the 1500s into the New Testament, right? This is something new. When Paul wrote this is one whole letter. So in order to get the whole understanding, Paul always explains himself. But before we even get into that, I'm gonna grab Peter's real quick. 2 Peter's. 2 Peter's chapter 3, verse 15.
It's 2 Peter's chapter 3, verse 15.
Mm-hmm.
And account that the long suffering of our Lord is salvation.
Mm-hmm.
Even as our beloved brother Paul, also according to the wisdom given unto him, hath written unto you, as also in his epistles.
Now we know what Galatians is, right? The book of Galatians, what is that?
Epistle,
it's an epistle, a letter. So this is what Paul is what Peter, Christ's right hand man, is talking about, right? All his epistles, right? Read on.
As also in all his epistles, speaking them of these things, in which are some things hard to be understood.
Now Peter's letting it be known. Some things are hard to be understood, right? Read on.
Which they that are unlearned and unstable rest, as they do also the other scriptures unto their own destruction.
He said people is wrestling with Paul's letters as they do the other scriptures unto their own destruction. Meaning what? If you really don't know the other scriptures, he's talking about is what? The Old Testament, because there was no such thing as a New Testament when they was writing this. So they wrestling with the Old Testament Then they're hearing Paul's letters and getting confused. If you're not stable in the Old Testament, you shouldn't even be dealing with Paul's letters. That's what's getting at. Because he said, what? As wrestle, to which they that are unlearned, they don't know the law, and unstable rest. They wrestle with that as they do also the other scriptures, the Old Testament, unto their own destruction. They doing this to their own destruction. Right? So he letting it be known that Paul wasn't writing and against what the Old Testament was saying. And we're going to get that out of Paul's own mouth. Let's get on real quick. Let's get Acts chapter 26. Acts chapter 26. And we're going to go into Acts a lot too, because Acts lets us know a lot of stuff that was going on during this time, right? Acts 26, and we're going to read verse 22. This is Paul speaking right here.
Acts 26, verse 22. Having therefore obtained help.
Actually, no, it started at verse 21 so they could see exactly who's speaking.
Acts 26, verse 21. For these cause the Jews caught me in the temple and went about to kill me.
You started at verse 1? No, so I said Salakia, 26, verse 1.
Oh,
my fault.
Sorry. Acts chapter 26, verse 1. Then Agrippa said unto Paul,
Agrippa, right? He's a leader right now.
Said unto Paul, thou art permitted to speak for thyself. Then Paul stretched forth his hand and answered for himself. I think myself happy, King Agrippa, because I shall answer for myself this day before thee touching all things where I have accused of the Jews.
Whereof I am accused of the Jews. So right now, Paul is on trial because he's being accused of everything that the Christian church is accusing him of now. And we're going to go back into that. But they accusing him of not teaching against the circumcision, teaching against the law, right? So you could jump down to 22. This showing that Paul, once he got that chance to speak, he kept on speaking. 22, what did it say?
Having therefore attained help of the Most High, I continue unto this day, witnessing both to small and great, saying none other things than those which the prophets and Moses did say should come. So
out of Paul's own mouth, he's saying, I said nothing different than what the Old Testament. Now somebody's gonna have to say, if they saying he's teaching against the circumcision, against the law, they're gonna have to go into the Old Testament and prove that it's gonna be done away with. Where Paul said it's gonna be done away with. You feel what I'm saying? Where he getting that from? If Paul saying that and if he's lying, they shouldn't be dealing with him in the first place, right? So let's go back to Galatians 5, and we're gonna break this down little by little, and then see where this comes from. Right. Galatians 5.
The book of Galatians, chapter 5, verse 1. Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherewith Christ hath made us free, and be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage.
All right. So do we understand what the liberty is and what the yoke of bondage is? If anybody knows, speak up.
You said the law comes.
No, that's what the liberty. What is the liberty that made us free, and what is the bondage? All right.
The liberty is us keeping it.
Not necessarily. We're gonna go up. Go right up. Remember, I said this was one long letter. Right. There was no chapters and verses in here. So we're gonna go right back up to chapter 4, and we could read verse 22. Start at 22.
Galatians 4:22. For it is written that Abraham had two sons, one by a bondmaid, the other by a free woman. But he was.
We know who the dad is talking about, right? Isaac, and Isaac being from the free woman, and Ishmael being from the bondmaid, right? Read on.
But he was born after the flesh.
Born after the flesh. Isaac came after Ishmael, right? Read.
But
the one that born of the bondwoman was whatchamacallit. He was it wasn't of the promise. It wasn't a promise. That was just something a child he had, right? But read on.
But he of the free woman was by promise.
But he of the free woman was by promise. Isaac was promised. Sarah was promised to have that baby, right? Read on.
Which things are an allegory.
These are allegory, right? It's a example, or what's another word for that? It's an example, and that's the best word I can find right now. The other word comes to my mouth, I say it. But read on.
For these are the two covenants.
These are the two covenants. Remember, one is in bondage, one is a bondage, and one is free. These are the two covenants. That's what he's talking about. The new covenant being the which came after, you feel what I'm saying, is free. That's freed us up. When Christ died, he let us into that new covenant. Con? We're gonna read more on that, but read that. Keep on reading.
The one from Mount Sinai.
Read that. Read 23 again, Salakia.
Galatians 4:23.
But
he who was born after flesh. But he of the free woman was by promise.
Read on.
Which things are an allegory. For these are the two covenants. The one from Mount Sinai, which gendereth to bondage, which is Agar.
Read on.
For this Agar is Mount Sinai in Arabia, and answereth to Jerusalem, which now is in bondage with her children.
Right. So for the two covenants, the first covenant being the one that was in bondage, because our people, even though the Most High gave it to us, we could keep it. We didn't keep it. That's what made us into bondage, right? By law, what happens? If we didn't keep the law, we was cursed, right? Now, the new covenant, what's the new covenant? That we would not sin no more, right? Let's grab that real quick. Hebrews chapter 8 and 8.
Hebrews 8 and 8. For finding fault with them.
Finding fault with us, not the covenant itself. Finding fault with us, right? Read.
He said, behold, the days come, saith the Most High, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah.
The house of Israel and the house of Judah, right? Showing that this is dealing with Israel, only Israel alone, right? But read on.
Not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by their hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they continued not in my covenant.
Because we did not continue his covenant, right? Read.
And I regarded them not, said the Most High.
So we got punished. We got them curses, that bondage, right? Read on.
For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after the days, said the Most High.
So this is going to be the new covenant. This is what's coming, right? Read.
I will put my laws in their mind and write them in their hearts. And I will be to them a power, and they shall be my people. So
no more will we have to think, is that lawful? You feel what I'm saying? We're not going to have to go through that struggle. Is this okay? Is that okay? We're going to know what we're supposed to be doing and follow the Most High. That's what makes us free, right? Read on.
And they shall not teach every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, know the Most High. For all shall know me, from the least to the greatest. We all going to know the Most High. We're not going to be separated from him. Our sins is not going to separate us from him. We're going to know what we're supposed to be doing, right? That's what makes us free. You go back to Galatians 5, right? Read 1 again. Galatians 5 verse 1. Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherewith Christ hath made us free. So we see how Christ made us free. Christ being of that new covenant, right? As we read right from 4 down, the next chapter up, letting us know what that's talking about. Same conversation, right? That freedom is that new covenant, right? Read on. And be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage. That yoke of bondage being the old covenant. Now, how did Christ make us free? Let's get Matthew 26 and 27 real quick. We're going to keep coming right back to Galatians. We're going to break it down at
into its entirety, in its fullest, I should say, totality.
Matthew 26, what?
26, verse 27.
It's the book of Matthew, chapter 26, verse 27. And he took the cup and gave thanks, and gave it, saying, drink ye all of it. For this is my blood of the New Testament.
New Testament or New Covenant, right? Read.
Which is shed for many for the remission of sins.
Right. His blood was shed to take away our sins. We all know this. Even the Christian church teaches, right? But we got to understand how powerful that is. One of the bonds of the old covenant, we could say, is like there was certain things that there's no forgiveness for. We understand this, right? For instance, adultery. If you committed adultery, what was the punishment for that? Death. Can you sacrifice for that?
No.
There's no forgiveness for that, right? How many of us was adulterous in the world? The majority of us, right? I would say 99% of Israel is adulterous. That means we all would have to die. How many of us was in idolatry? What's the punishment for idolatry? Death. All of us was in that, unless you was born in the truth. You know what I mean? We all was in idolatry. There's no forgiveness for that. Christ's blood took us out of that bondage. We all was able to come back. You feel what I'm saying? And we're gonna go on to show that, right? Galatians 5. You just read verse 1 again, right? Read verse 2 now.
Galatians
5 verse 2.
Galatians 5 verse 2. Behold, I Paul say unto you that if ye be circumcised, Christ shall profit you nothing.
Now it's saying, we be circumcised, Christ shall profit us nothing. That sounds like if you get circumcised, Christ don't profit you nothing. What is the law of circumcision? Exactly. You can't just get circumcised anytime you want, right? Let's grab that real quick so we can get the full understanding of this. Genesis chapter, what is that? Is it 17? No, it's not. 17. Genesis chapter 17, and we're gonna start at verse. We're gonna start at verse 10.
It's the book of Genesis 17, verse 10. And the Most High said unto Abraham, thou shalt keep my covenant, therefore thou and thy seed after thee in the generations. This is my covenant, which ye shall keep between me and you and thy seed after thee. Every man child among you shall be circumcised.
Every man child among you shall be circumcised. That's right. Every man child among you shall be circumcised. Now, there's a specific way we're supposed to go about this, right? Read on.
And ye shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin. And it shall be a token of the covenant between me and you.
All right, this is the token of the covenant between Israel and the Most High. Read.
And he that is 8 days old shall be circumcised among you.
He that is 8 days old shall be circumcised. We have to get circumcised on the 8th day. That's the law, right? Read on.
Every man child in your generation that is born in the house or bought with money of a stranger, which is not of thy seed, he that is born in thy house and be bought that is bought with money must needs be circumcised.
Must needs be circumcised. They got to get circumcised, right? But read on.
For my covenant shall be in your flesh, for I am everlasting covenant.
Covenant. This never goes away. We supposed to keep this, right? Read on.
And the uncircumcised man child whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, that soul must be cut off from his people. he hath broken my covenant.
That child that wasn't circumcised on the 8th day, his soul shall be cut off from the Most High's people. He's broken the Most High's covenant. That covenant is, and that law is, to get circumcised on the 8th day. So when people actually get circumcised after that, before that, they broke that covenant. They supposed to be cut off, right? They supposed to be cut off, right? So the whole reason why this was written, Galatians was written, was because of what happened in Acts chapter 15, which we're gonna get into. Actually, we could get into that right now, but let's go into that right now. Actually, let's read Galatians 2. Galatians 2, and we're gonna prove that that's what it's going into. Galatians 2, start from the top.
Book of Galatians chapter 2, verse 1. Then 14 years after I went up again to Jerusalem with Barnabas, took Titus with me also. Right,
so Paul went there after 14 years, went back to Jerusalem. He went there with Barnabas and Titus, right? Read on.
And I went up by revelation and communicated unto them that gospel which I preach among the Gentiles.
Notice how he said the Gentiles. Reason being, Israel was scattered amongst the Gentiles, right? But read on.
But privately to them which were reputation, lest by any means I should run or have run in vain.
Cons, he's talking about when he went to the elders privately, right? But read on.
But neither Titus, who was with me, being a Greek and compelled to be circumcised. Right, now Titus, right along with him, was compelled to be circumcised. Titus went there and got circumcised. Right, now quick question. If circumcision, if you get circumcised and that takes you away from Yahweh, that take you away from Christ, why would he let Titus get circumcised in the first place? Does that make any sense? Not at all, right? But Titus got circumcised there when he went, right? Read on. Keep going?
Come on.
So, verse 4. And that because of false brethren unawares brought in, who came in privily to spy our liberty, which we have in Christ, that they might bring us into bondage.
They might bring us back into that bondage. But we see that liberty, what that liberty is, the new covenant, and the bondage being the old covenant, right? Read.
To whom we gave place by subjection, no, not for an hour.
So he was like, he didn't play into what they was trying to push. If he didn't play into what they was trying to push, and circumcision is wrong, why would he let Titus get circumcised? You feel what I'm saying? Like that's just destroying all that whole doctrine right there, right? But read on.
That the truth of the gospel might continue with you.
So you see that he went there and he was talking to the elders in Israel, and Paul and Titus got circumcised, right? But you could read on.
But of these who seem to be somewhat, whatsoever they were, it maketh no matter to me. The Most High accepted no man's person. For they who seem to be somewhat in conference added nothing to me. But contrary-wise, when they saw that the gospel of this uncircumcision was committed unto me, as the gospel of circumcision was unto Peter. For he wrought effectually in Peter to the
apostleship
of the circumcision. The same was might in the towards the Gentiles.
Right. Read on.
And when James,
Cephas being Peter, right? Read.
And John.
Now these are the three heads of the church: James, John, and Peter. James being a brother of Christ, right? Read.
And when James, Cephas, and John, who be pillars, perceived the grace that was given unto me, they gave to me and Barnabas the right hands of fellowship, that we should go out unto the heathen as they and they until the circumcision.
Yeah, so he's letting it be known, like they gave him the okay to go do what he was doing, where he's going to who was considered Gentiles or the uncircumcision. One thing about the circumcision and uncircumcision is we would have been considered uncircumcision, even though we circumcised. You feel what I'm saying? We would have been considered the uncircumcision because we don't even know if we were circumcised on the 8th day. When you look at how doctors circumcise their children, they a lot of times they do it on the 3rd day. You feel what I'm saying? We grew up in Christian church or all these different churches. You feel what I'm saying? We would have been considered the uncircumcision whether we were circumcised or not. That's how they was looking at it. The circumcision being the one who grew up in Jewry, right? So let's go to Acts 15. So he's letting it be known he went there, and the whole reason why he's writing this letter to the Galatians is because of what's going on. Actually, let's go to Acts 14. We're gonna start there. Say that again. We'll start at. I want to start at the top, really.
It's the book of Acts, chapter 14, verse 1. And it come to pass in Iconium that they went both together in the synagogue of the Jews, and so spake that the great multitude, both of the Jews and also of the Greeks, believed. But the unbelieving Jews stirred up the Gentiles. Right. So the unbelieving Jews, the ones that didn't believe in Yahweh Shah, were stirring everybody up. His whole mission was to go teach the Israelites that was spread out about Yahweh Shah. Right, so the unbelieving, the ones that didn't believe about Yahweh Shah, is stirring up problems, right? But read on. And made their minds evil effect against their brethren. Long time, therefore, abode they speak boldly in the Most High, which gave testimony unto the word of his grace, and granted signs and wonders to be done by with their hands. Right, so they over there doing all type of miracles. They was in Iconium. Iconium is in Turkey. I believe that's in Turkey. It might be Greece, but I believe this one's in Turkey. Yeah, Turkey, right? What's known today as Konya, Turkey, right? But you could read on. Acts 14, verse 4. But the multitude of the city was divided, and part held with the Jews, and part with the apostles. Right. And when there was an assault made also of the Jews with their rulers to use them despitefully and to stone them. Right. So they was getting into a lot of issues, teaching Yahweh Shah. They was trying to stone them over there for teaching that, right? But read on. Verse 6. They were aware of it and fled into Lystra, right, Derbe, Lycaonia, and until regions that lieth round about. So all this is in Turkey. These are other cities that's in Turkey that they fled to, which back in those days, Israel had a heavy presence in Turkey. Heavy presence, right? But read on. Verse 7. And there they preached the gospel. And there they sat certain men at Lystra, impotent in his feet, being crippled from his mother's womb, who never walked, who never had walked. Right. The same heard Paul speak, who steadfastly beholding him and perceiving that he had faith to be healed. Right. Said with a loud voice, stand upright on thy feet. And he leaped and walked. And when Paul saw, and when the people saw what Paul had done, they lifted up their voices, saying in speech of Lycaonia, the gods are come down to us in the likeness of men. Right. Now that Greek, you got to remember, people was getting called Greek. This is in Turkey, and people was getting called Greek. Reason being, they follow Greek customs. Anybody, when you look at that word, Helen, I'm gonna pull that up right now. Actually, let's see.
Bible. Give me a sec, Salakia. Brought this up earlier. Okay. All right, my screen should be sharing now. All right, when you look at that word Greek, right? I'm gonna pull it up. That word Greek is Helen, and what it means is that look at that outline of biblical usage. A Greek, either by nationality, whether a native of the main of the Greek islands or colony. If you was born, it's kind of like American. You born in a Greek colony, you're considered Greek. You know what I'm saying? Second one, in a wider sense, the name embraces all nations, not Jews, not those professing to be Jews, but all nations that made the language, customs, and learning of a difference of religion and worship. Right? When we grab, I think we all went through this before. When we look at what you would call it, Maccabees. It's like America. When you're born here, but we could see how we actually started becoming calling ourselves Greeks. Look at Book of chapter 1, and we could read chapter 1. We're gonna start at verse 41. There's a lot more we can go into, but we're gonna touch on a lot of topic. Well, not a lot of stuff in here today. I'm trying to make it quick. First Maccabees, chapter 1, verse 41. Now, if there's any time y'all not understanding something not making sense, let me know, Bible could shot, so I can slow it down and go into more detail. Does it make sense so far? First Maccabees, chapter 1, verse 41.
It's the book of First Maccabees, an Apocrypha, chapter 1, verse 41. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king.
Now we got to remember too, the Romans had control, and the Greeks had control of Turkey, that whole area. The Romans stemmed from the Greeks. They had the same gods, same deities, same language, same everything. You know what I'm saying? Originally had control of all that area, right? So read on.
So, verse 44, verse 43. Yeah, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion.
Right, so he made it, Antiochus made it law that we left our laws and all that stuff, right? And he said many of the Israelites consented
to his religion and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Sabbath. For the king had sent letters by messengers to Jerusalem and cities of Judah that they should follow the strange laws of the land and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifices and drink offerings in the temple, that they should profane the Sabbath and festival days.
Right. So we wound up profaning the Sabbath, the festival days. We wasn't following any of our laws and made ourselves uncircumcised. Right. You could jump to Second Maccabees. We're gonna try to go through this kind of quick. Second Maccabees, chapter 6. 6, and you can start at 1. We're gonna read 1 to 6.
The book of Second Maccabees, book of Second Maccabees, chapter 6, verse 1. Not long after the king sent an old man of Athens to compel the Jews to go from the laws of their fathers.
Like they was really on us to get away from our laws, right? Trying to compel us. They was putting people to death for following the laws, so on and so forth, right? But read on.
And not to live after the laws of the Most High. And to pollute also the temple of Jerusalem and call it the temple of Jupiter Olympius.
Jupiter being Zeus, right? Read on.
And that the garrison of Jupiter, the defender of strangers, as they did desire that dwell in the place.
Right. So they polluted our temple. They had us going away from the laws, right? But read on.
I'm sorry.
This is Second Maccabees chapter 6. He at verse 3.
Okay. Second Maccabees chapter 6, verse 3. The coming in of mischief was sore and grievous to the people. Right.
They made it real hard for us during this time, right? But read on.
For the temple was filed with riot and reveling by the Gentiles who daily had harlots and had to do with women within the circuit of the holy places.
Right. They was having parties in the temple. They was having whores in the temple. You know what I mean? He was doing all type of foul stuff in our temple, right? But read on.
And besides that, brought in things that were not lawful. The altar also was filled with profane things, which the law forbidded.
Right. They used to sacrifice pigs on our altar. Right. Yeah. They was real foul. But read on.
Neither was it lawful for a man to keep the Sabbath days or ancient feasts.
So they made it unlawful to keep the Sabbath days. It was against the law to keep the Sabbath. It was against the law to keep our feasts, Passover, Tabernacles, all these feasts. Right? Read on.
Or to profess himself at all to be a Jew.
You could not even call yourself a Jew. That was against the law. So if you're not calling yourself a Jew, what you calling yourself? Greek, because they're the ones that you're under. That's who you're following after, right? So you're going to be called a Greek, right?
Still somewhat like that.
Yeah.
Can you call yourself Jews now?
Yeah, they only us too. Yeah. It's a problem when we call ourselves Jews, which why we have. Now, I mean, America took after all these different things, right? But let's go back to where we were just at in Acts 14, right? So we seeing how we even started becoming called Greeks, right? But Acts 14, you remember where you was at?
Yeah, I stopped at 8. I just read 8.
Come.
I stopped at 7. And they preached the gospel. And had a certain man at Lystra, impotent in his feet, being crippled from his mother's womb, who never had walked. The feet, who steadfastly beholding him, and perceiving that he had faith to be healed, said with a loud voice, "Stand upright on thy feet," and he leaped and walked.
Right. So Paul over here doing all type of miracles, right? This man could not walk; he was crippled, and Paul said, "Yo, he could see it. He could see he had the faith in him." So he like, "Yo, stand up and walk." The man was able to walk, right? So read on.
And Slakia said the loud voice, verse 11. And when the people saw what Paul had done, they lifted up their voices, saying in speech of Laconia, "The God are come down to us in likeness to men." And they called Barnabas and Paul Marcius, because he was the chief speaker. Right. So
Mercury's, which would be Hermes in the Greek. You know what I mean? He was a messenger of the gods. Messenger of the gods, Hermes, right? Mercury. And they called Barnabas, so, you know, because Paul was a speaker, the chief speaker, and Barnabas, they thought was Jupiter or Zeus. He looked like the boss. You know what I mean? We don't know.
Then the priest of Jupiter, which was before the city, brought oxen and garland unto the gates, and would have done sacrifice with the people.
Right. So they really believe in that these are the two gods coming down amongst men. This is something that's known in Greek culture. That's not our culture. You know what I mean? That's why that's why they try to put Yahweh Shah on that, you know what I mean, level of the Most High, basically. That's a Greek thing, or where the Most High God sleeps with a woman and have a baby. That's all in Greek culture, right? But read on.
Which, verse 14. Acts 14:14.
Hey, I'm not going too fast, right? I'm trying to go kind of fast because there's a lot we touching on, but I want to make sure everybody understanding what I'm going into. We good? Come on. All right.
Acts 14:14. Which when the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard of, they rent their clothes and ran in among the people, crying out.
Right. So they hearing this, they're like, oh, they really looking at us like God's tore their clothes. They, you know what I mean? They got mad and scared, right? But read on.
And saying, sirs, why do these things? We are also men of like passions with you.
Like, yo, we the same. We got the same passions. We got the same so on and so forth. We you don't do this, right? Read on.
And preach unto you that ye should turn from these vanities unto the living God.
Right. Stop doing what you doing and start worshiping the Most High.
In the sea and all the things that are therein.
Right. Read on.
Who in times past suffered all nations to walk in their own ways.
Right. He's saying times past he let the other nations do what they wanted to do, right? But read on.
Nevertheless, he left not himself without witness.
And the witnesses is who? Israel. Always been Israel, right? We are his witnesses. All right, let's grab that real quick. Hold that. Let's get let's see, Isaiah 40. Give me a second. 47. Isaiah 43:10.
The book of Isaiah.
Start at verse 1 so we can see who he's talking to.
So the book of Isaiah, chapter 43, verse 1.
But
now thus saith the Most High that created thee, O Jacob, and formed thee, O Israel, so fear not.
Say, O Jacob, this is who he's talking to, read.
Fear not, for I have redeemed thee.
He have redeemed us. He have redeemed us, Israel, read.
I have called thee by name. Thou art mine.
Thou art mine, right? Now you could jump down to yeah, that's a fact, right? So you could jump down to verse 10.
Yeah.
So who's he talking to?
Israel.
We are his witnesses. This is one of them scriptures that Jehovah's Witnesses like to go to. They'll jump there. This is where he calls us his witnesses. No, this is Israel he's calling witnesses. Right? He said, my witnesses, right? Read on.
Saith the Lord. And my servants whom I have chosen.
We just read that he had chose us, right? He redeemed us, read.
That they may know and believe me and understand that I am he. Believe me, there is no power. So like before me there is no power formed. Neither shall there be after me.
Right. We are his witnesses that he is real. Everything about this Bible is directed towards us. The simple fact that we went into slavery proves that God is real. Simple fact of how we are as people proves that he's real. You know what I mean? But his witnesses, right? So we could go back to Acts
14 verse 17.
Come.
Nevertheless, he left not himself without witness. And that he did good and gave us rain from heaven, fruitful seasons, filling our hearts.
Right.
And with these sayings, scarce restrained they the people that they have not done sacrifice.
Right. So they did this so that, and let it be known, so these people would not sacrifice them. They did not want that to happen, right? But keep on reading.
Verse 19. And they came thither certain Jews from Antioch and Iconium, and having all drew him out of the city, supposing he had been dead.
So from Paul's teachings, Paul suffered to blood. From his teachings, they thought he was dead. This man got stoned for the word. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Where they thought he was dead, but what happened? You read on.
How be as the disciples stood round about, he rose up and came into the city. The next day, he departed with Barnabas and Derbe.
To Derbe, yeah. So he got up out of there. He got up the next day, got up out of there. But there's a possibility that he died and the Most High just brought him back. Or he just, because they thought he was dead. They thought he was dead, right? But read on.
And when they had preached the gospel to the city and had taught many and returned again to Lystra and Iconium and Antioch,
right,
confirming the souls of the disciples and exhorting them to continue in the faith.
I just want to bring this up too real quick. We understand that all these places is in Turkey, right? That he's talking about. The ancient name for Turkey was what? Galatia. This is where he was at, Galatia. So that church that he's writing to, Galatians, these are the people who he's writing to. You feel what I'm saying? But read on. Sorry if I didn't bring that up earlier. My mind's all over the place right now. But read on.
Verse 22, Acts 14:22. Concerning the souls of the disciples and exhorting them to continue the faith, and that we must through much tribulation enter into the kingdom of the Most High.
Right, same way he did. He had to go through trials and tribulation. Paul was stoned, he was shipwrecked. He went through a lot for this word, so we got to expect to go through that also. We're going to go through some trials and tribulation. But concerning the souls of the disciples and exhorting them to continue in the faith, continue, right? Push on each other, continue in the faith, that we must through much tribulation enter into the kingdom of the Most High. Right? Read on.
And when they ordained elders in every church and had prayed with fasting, they commanded them to the Most High on whom they believed. After they had passed through Pisidia, they came to Pamphylia,
something like that, right? So yeah.
And when they had preached the word of Perga, they went down to Italy, and then sailed to Antioch, from which they had been recommended to the grace of the Most High for the work which they fulfilled.
Right. So this whole time, they in Galatia, right? And this is what was going on while they was in there, right? But read on.
Verse 27. And when they were come and had gathered the church together, they rehearsed all the Most High had done with them, and how he had opened the door of faith to the Gentiles. And they were abode a long time with the disciples.
And they abode a long time with the disciples.
So, when he said open the doors to the thing unto the Gentiles, is that just the ones who was in
these are Israelites. These are all Israelites. We got to remember that we would have been considered the Gentiles.
Yeah.
Growing up, calling ourselves American, Panamanian, Haitian, whatever we calling ourselves, we consider Gentiles. The Israelites that was living in Israel at the time, that grew up in Jewry, was not jacking us. They looked at us as we was not Israelites altogether. Right? Let's hold that quick. Let's grab Ezekiel chapter 11. Is it? Yeah. Actually, I think it's 15. I want. Give me a sec. Ezekiel 11. 11 and verse. We're gonna read 15.
Ezekiel 11:15. Sons of men, thy brethren, even thy brethren, the men of thy kindred, and all the house of Israel. Holy
hold on. He's saying, he's talking to Ezekiel, right? He's saying, son of man, thy brethren, even thy brethren, the men of thy kindred, your family, your people, and all the house of Israel are holy. The whole house of Israel, right? Are what? Read on.
Are they unto whom the inhabitants of Jerusalem have said?
They are the ones that the inhabitants of Jerusalem talk bad about, saying what?
Get you far from the Most High.
Right. The inhabitants of Jerusalem was looking at the rest of the Israelites as they not being Israel. He said, get you far from the Most High, read.
Unto us is the land given in possession.
Unto us is this land given. Like, we know that promise was for all Israel. He like, nah. They like, nah, this is ours. Y'all not even Israel no more. Y'all, because why? They wasn't circumcised. They cut off from their people. You feel what I'm saying? Makes sense. We're going to get into all that, right? But read on. Actually, you could drop that. Now, keep on reading. Read verse 16, and then we'll go back.
Therefore thus saith the Most High, although I have cast them from afar among the heathen.
Even though he says among the heathen, even though we lived amongst the heathen, we was in Greece, we was in Turkey, North Africa, we was in all these places, right? Read.
And although I have scattered them among the countries, yet I will be to them as little sanctuary in the countries they shall come.
And that's what happened. That's how you ended up with the church of Galatia, the church of Greece. You feel what I'm saying? All these different places, right? But we can go back to Acts. Go back to Acts and read. We in chapter 15 now. Come. Now this is where everything's gonna come into play. I wanted to get 14 so y'all could see where he was at all these different places he was jumping around and what was going on in these places, right? He was there fighting, trying to teach the Israelites that was there, and we had Jews that was coming from Jerusalem teaching them otherwise, differently, causing issues, causing problems, right? But read on.
Acts 15 from the top. And certain men which came down from Judea taught brethren, and except ye be circumcised after the manner of Moses, ye cannot be saved.
Now, to being circumcised in the manner of Moses, what is that? Being circumcised on 8th day. Yeah. That's what was pushed. You cannot just get circumcised as a grown man. You feel what I'm saying? So they saying as a manner of Moses, you have to get circumcised 8th day in order to be saved. Or you can, he said, except ye be circumcised after the manner of Moses, you cannot be saved. Meaning, if you wasn't circumcised the 8th day, you're not going to be saved. It don't matter what you do. This is what they was teaching. This is what they was pushing, right? If you're not circumcised at the manner of Moses, you're not going to be saved, right? But read on.
Verse 2. When therefore Paul and Barnabas had no small dissension,
where they had issues with that, right? Read on.
And disputation with them, they determined that Paul and Barnabas and certain other of them should go up to Jerusalem unto the apostles and elders about this question.
Right. So now you got these Israelites coming like, yo, listen, they can't be saved anyways. They didn't get circumcised on the 8th day. They can't get saved, right?
That was the law then.
Yeah, well, the law was that you had to be circumcised. Period. You got circumcised the 8th day. If you can get circumcised the 8th day, but that's where Christ's blood comes in at, because he grants us forgiveness of the stuff that we couldn't do or that we didn't know about. Right?
They were preaching this on the New Testament.
Say that again?
They were preaching this on the New Testament.
Right. He was out there preaching that, yo, Christ's blood covers that we could come back. That was his whole thing. He's teaching, Paul, Barnabas, and the elders was teaching that Christ's blood brings us back. You know what I mean? We good. Whereas these people were saying, nah, y'all done. Y'all assed out. Part of my language. Y'all done. It's not going to help y'all. Right? But read on. Nah. We're going to read, we're going to keep on at 15.
Verse 3. And being brought in their own on their own way by the church, they passed through Phoenix and Samaria, declaring the conversation of conversion of the Gentiles.
Right.
And they caused great joy unto all the heathen.
Unto all the brethren.
So like all the brethren.
Right. Showing that this is Israel that they teaching, right? They brought great joy into the brethren that they could be saved, right? But read on.
And when they were coming to Jerusalem, they were received of the church and of the apostles and elders, and they declared all things that the Most High done with them.
Right. So once they got there, they letting it be known, like, okay, the Most High let us do these miracles here. This is what was going on. They breaking down everything that we just read in 14. Right.
But these rose up certain of the sect of the Pharisees which believed, saying that is was needful to circumcise them, to command them to keep thy law of Moses.
Right. Now the sect of the Pharisees wasn't saying exactly what was being said in the beginning of 15. They saying, okay, yeah, we believe in Yahweh Shah, but they got to get circumcised right away. You got to circumcise them like now, right? But read on.
And the apostles and elders came together for to consider of this matter.
So they had to come together and think of like, okay, how are we gonna go about doing this? Because circumcision, we understand, is very important, right? You have to get circumcised. That law is still law, right? Real quick, let's grab Ezekiel chapter 40. I think I want Ezekiel chapter. Hold on. Yeah, that's a fact. You got to keep the Passover, but you can't keep it uncircumcised. You know what I mean? So we have to get circumcised, right? But we want to get Ezekiel chapter 44. Ezekiel chapter 44 and verse 6.
It's the book of Ezekiel chapter 44, verse 6. And thou shalt say to the rebellious, even the house of Israel, thus saith the Most High, O ye house of Israel, let it suffice you abomination. So
he say, let it suffice you of all your abominations. Like y'all real comfortable with all the abominations that y'all doing, right? But read on.
And that ye have brought into my sanctuary strangers, uncircumcised in heart, meaning they not keeping the law. Because that's one of the other things that Paul was pushing heavy. He's saying like, yo, listen, how you gonna say you circumcised, but you're not even keeping the law? He's like, yo, these ones that y'all calling uncircumcised are actually keeping the law. That's another thing that he's pushing, right? But he's like uncircumcised in the heart, meaning they not keeping the law, right? Read. And the physical circumcision, right? Read. To be in my sanctuary to pollute it.
The Most High God says that pollutes his house. We know he don't change. You feel what I'm saying? So if that pollutes then, it's gonna pollute it now, right? But read on.
Even my house, when ye offer my bread, the fat and the blood, and they have broken my covenant because of all your abominations.
We have broken his covenants, and that's why we're in need of a new one, right? But jump down to verse 9 for me.
Ezekiel 44, verse 9. Said the Most High, no strangers uncircumcised in heart.
Now, this is a future prophecy. This is a future prophecy for the future temple that's coming. It says, thus saith the Most High God, no stranger uncircumcised in heart, read.
Nor uncircumcised in flesh.
Nor uncircumcised in the flesh, right? Read.
Shall enter my sanctuary. Of any stranger that is among the children of Israel.
No stranger uncircumcised in heart or flesh is going to be able to enter into the Most High sanctuary. That's thus saith the Lord. So we have to get circumcised. You know what I'm saying? We go back to Acts 15. So he's never teaching against circumcision. They was just, some of them were saying, oh, they didn't get circumcised on the 8th day, it's over for them. Then you got the sect of the Pharisees that believed in Yahweh Shah. They good, but they got to get that done like ASAP, right? But read on.
Acts 15, verse 4. And when they were come to Jerusalem,
jump down to 6.
Yeah. And the apostles and elders came together for to consider this matter. And when they had been much disputed, Peter rose up and said unto them, Men and brethren, ye know how that a good while ago, the Most High made choice among us, that the Gentiles by my mouth should hear the word gospel and believe.
And most High, this is Peter talking. Remember, they said Peter was a apostle to the circumcision, right?
Mhm.
Showing what? Cornelius was of the circumcision. He was born in Israel. You know what I mean? He was born in that. He grew up being an Israelite. He just joined that Roman army. That's it, right? But read on.
And the Most High, with knowing the hearts bear them witness, giving them the Holy Ghost, even as He did unto us,
right?
And put no difference between them, purifying their hearts by faith. Now, therefore, why tempt the Most High? Why tempt ye the Most High?
Right.
And put a yoke upon the neck of the disciples. Neither our fathers nor we were able to bear.
Why they wasn't able to bear that? That's not a yoke they was able to bear. Why? Because they was all circumcised every day.
That's what
They was all circumcised every day. They don't know how it feels to be circumcised as a grown man. You feel what I'm saying? They was already circumcised, them and their forefathers, all of them. Their father, their grandfather, great grandfather, all circumcised every day. So they didn't have to worry. They don't know about that, being circumcised as a grown man. They know that's gonna hurt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's about it. Right?
Something new they heard.
Yeah, that's something. That's not something they ever had to think about. You know what I mean? That's why they didn't have to bear that, right? But read on. Matter of fact, hold on. Let's grab Philippians chapter 3 real quick. Philippians chapter 3. Nah. You talking about with Abraham? Philippians is with Paul. Philippians chapter 3, and we're gonna read we're gonna start from the top. It's right after Ephesians, before Colossians. You still got Galatians hold?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, it's right after that. Galatians.
This is the book of Philippians, chapter 3. Finally, my brother, rejoice in the Most High, to write the same things to you. To me, indeed, is not grievous, but for it is safe. For you it is safe. Beware of dogs, beware of evil work, beware of
concision, yeah. But beware of evil workers, people that sin, and beware of those that cause problems, right?
For we are the circumcision which worship the Most High in the Spirit and rejoice in Christ, and have no confidence in the flesh.
So he's writing to this church in Philippi. He said they are of the circumcision, Paul being one of them, right? They are of the circumcision, which what? Read that again. Verse 3.
For we are the circumcision which worship the Most High in Christ, have no confidence in the flesh.
Yeah, it got nothing to do with the flesh. They did what they were supposed to do, but they still worshiping the Most High in the Spirit. They keeping the law. They doing what they supposed to be doing, right? Read on.
Though I might also have confidence in the flesh.
He could if he want to, because a lot of people was pushing that. They the Abraham seed, they was circumcised the 8th day, they good. The promises for them. That's what they thinking. Everything else they're not really worried about. Right? Read on.
If any other man thinketh that he hath whereof he might trust in the flesh, I more circumcised the 8th day.
Hold on. You be reading too quick sometimes. You gotta take a little pause. He said, wherefore he might trust in the flesh, I more. You know what I mean? There's men that's talking about, because they was pushing that circumcision heavy. You gotta be circumcised the 8th day. He like me more so. I could push that. I could have more confidence in these people. The reason why, read on.
Circumcised, I more circumcised the 8th day.
He was circumcised the 8th day, read.
Of the stock of Israel.
Of the stock of Israel. He breaking down everything, right? Read.
Of the tribe of Benjamin.
Of tribe of Benjamin, read.
And Hebrew of the Hebrews.
He like, I'm a true Hebrew, right? A Hebrew of the Hebrews, read.
Touching the law of Pharisee.
Touching the law of Pharisee, meaning he's strict on that law. Paul is letting it be known he is strict on that law. He's strict on that law. So he's not going to teach against it, right? But read on.
Concerning zeal, persecuting the church.
According to the zeal, persecuting the church, which he did in the beginning, right? But you can read about that in chapter 1 of Galatians. Everything, right? But read on.
Touching the righteousness which is in the law, blameless.
He's blameless, meaning he kept every law. This is a man that keeps every law. He said he teaches the law. So how is he all of a sudden teaching against the law? It don't make sense. That's Paul's own words, right? Let's go back to Acts. And where was we at? Verse 11.
Acts 15, verse 11. But we believe that though the grace of the Most High of Yahweh Shai, we shall be saved even as they.
Right. Through the grace of Yahweh Shai, through his blood being shed, that we able to come back, even though we really should be all dead. Right? But read on.
Then all the multitude kept silence and gave audience to Barnabas and Paul, declaring what miracles and wonders of the Most High had wrought among the Gentiles by men.
By them. Right. So they want to see if the Most High is really, right? And what happened?
Verse 13. And after they had held their peace, James answered, saying, Men and brethren, hearken unto me.
Right. So after that, James answered, Men and brethren, listen to me. Right. Read.
Simeon hath declared how the Most High at first did visit the Gentiles.
Simeon being Peter. Right. That's his name. Right. Read on.
To take them out of people for his name. And to his agreed, and to this prophets, as it is written.
Right. Prophets let it be known that Israel was going to be scattered amongst the heathen. So we have to be gathered from amongst the heathen, right? If we scattered amongst the heathen, we're going to be following after what they did. All right, but read on. Everything is making sense, right? I ain't losing nobody.
Verse 16. After this, I will return, and I will build again the tabernacle of David, which is fallen down, and I will build up again the ruins thereof. I will also set it up.
Right, he's quoting Amos, right? Read on.
That the residue of men might seek after the Most High, and all the Gentiles upon whom my name is called, saith the Most High, that do all these things.
Right. Read on.
Known unto the Most High all his works from the beginning of the world, wherefore my sentence is that we trouble not them which from among the Gentiles are turned to the Most High.
Right. So he said, we're not going to trouble them that's turned to the Most High, right? We're not going to worry them. We're not going to scare them off, right? Read on.
But that we write them, that they abstain from the pollutions of idols, and from the fornication, and from the things strangled from blood. Right.
So he's giving them basically a little starter package, right? Give them a starter package. Yo, this is tell them do this. We don't want to scare them off. They came, they loving what they hearing. You know what I mean? Give them this right here. We're gonna let them know the wait. Read that part again.
I'm gonna start at 18. Known unto the Most High all work from the beginning of the world. Wherefore my sentence is that we trouble them not. We trouble not them from among the Gentiles are turned to the Most High. But that we write unto them that they abstain from pollutions of idols.
So make sure that, because this is a problem that they had in those areas. In those Greek areas, they was their deities and shops and so on and so forth. So they like, stay away from the animals that sacrifice to deities, right, Reed?
And from fornication.
Them Greeks and Romans was very big on homosexuality, adultery. They got into a lot of different wild stuff. Like, stay away from all that, Reed.
And from things strangled.
Because they used to strangle animals to death, which is against the law. Right, Reed?
And from blood.
And don't eat nothing bloody, right, Reed?
For Moses, that for in old English means what? Because exactly. Because Moses, and he's telling them, but that we write unto them
They abstain from pollution of idols and from fornication and from things strangled and from blood, because Moses, right? Read on.
Of the old time hath in every city them that preached him.
Because they're gonna hear about Moses, the law that Moses gave every week, right? Read on.
Being read in the synagogues every Sabbath day.
So all these Gentiles that they was teaching to was in the synagogues every Sabbath day. So you're like, yo, give them this to do right now. They're gonna go to the synagogues every Sabbath. They're gonna hear the law, and it's gonna convict them, and they're gonna want to start keeping the law. You feel what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Which is how it really is when you even look at how we do things now. When people go to school, different churches, we learn certain things we know off the rip we're not supposed to be doing. Then later on, we learn more and more and more and start, following them ways. We don't burden everybody with everything all at once, right? But read on.
Then pleased did the apostles and elders with the whole church to send chosen men of their own company.
So everybody agreed with this. Everybody, even the Pharisees among them, agreed with how this was going to go. And we know the Pharisees were strict on the law. So this is not saying don't get circumcised. It's saying, yo, don't push that on them right away. That's all it is, right? So everybody was pleased with this, right? Read on.
To send chosen men of their own company to Antioch with Paul and Barnabas, namely Judas, surnamed Barnabas, and Silas, chief men among the brethren.
Right. So then now that's where the Paul, so he was writing these letters, and that's where that letter from Galatians came from, right? Let's go back to Galatians real quick. Galatians chapter. Paul was Benjamin.
Verse 2, chapter 2,
we're gonna get Galatians. Yeah, let's get actually get chapter 3.
From top. Galatians 3, verse 1. O foolish Galatians, who hath bewitched you?
Right, because people came in talking about, you know what I mean? Y'all gotta get y'all can't get circumcised. Some circumcised right away. Others saying, oh, you can't. It don't matter what you do. You're not gonna be saved, right? Read.
That ye should not obey the truth. Before whose eyes Christ had been evidently set forth.
Because he was already there doing all those miracles in front of them, letting it be known, like, yo, we coming to you. We the ones doing these miracles in front of you. You know what I mean? You know that the Most High sent us. You know what I'm saying? Read on.
Christ had been evidently set forth, crucified among you. This only would I have learned, would I learn of you. Receive ye the Spirit by the works of the law, or by hearing of faith. Right, because that works, they came there and they getting these miracles done amongst them before they knew to keep the law. You know what I'm saying? All this was shown to them before. So was that Spirit given to them by them keeping the law, or by what they was hearing in faith? That man that was healed, remember that man that was healed, that was crippled, he perceived that he had the faith, and he told him to stand up, you know what I mean? And he was healed. Through what? Through that faith. But that doesn't neglect the law. We got to keep that law, right? Let's go back to Galatians 5. We're gonna read that again. Galatians 5, and then we're gonna jump back to Acts. We're gonna go to Acts 21. Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherewith Christ has made us free, and be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage. Right. Behold, I, Paul, say unto you that if ye be circumcised, Christ shall profit you nothing. And we just read in Philippians 3 that Paul was circumcised. Right. Does Christ not profit him? Over there in Galatians 2, when they went when they went to Jerusalem, they were circumcised. And Paul let that happen. So is Christ not profiting him? Does that make sense? Right? We read on. For I testify again to you, every man that is circumcised is that he is a debtor to you the whole law. To do the whole law, which is a fact. Why he got to say this? Because the same thing Christ was saying. People say to do something and don't do it. Like a lot of the Pharisees was telling you to keep the law, but they wasn't keeping it themselves. People telling you to get circumcised or you need
they're not following the law. If you circumcised, you got to keep the whole law. That circumcision itself is not going to do nothing for you. You got to get it, but you have to keep the whole law, right? Real quick, Deuteronomy 27. Deuteronomy 27, verse 26.
It's the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 27, verse 26.
Mm-hmm.
Cursed be he that confirmeth not all the words of the Lord to do them, and the people shall say.
Right. Cursed be he that don't keep the whole law. That's going to happen regardless. You're going to have to keep that law. Can't get around it, right? Let's go back to Galatians, right? And let's read, keep on, verse 4.
Come. Galatians chapter 5, verse 4. Christ came, Christ is become of you no effect unto you. Christ has become no effect unto you. Whosoever of you are justified by the law, ye are fallen from grace.
Right. Those that are justified by the law are going to be all falling from grace. Why? Because they don't believe in Yahweh Shah. They believe in that everything is justified by the law. Let's grab 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 9. First Corinthians chapter 6, verse 9.
The book of 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 9. Know ye not the unrighteous shall inherit the kingdom of the Most High.
The unrighteous shall not inherit the kingdom of the Most High, right? What makes you unrighteous? Breaking the law, right? We know that circumcision is part of the law, right? He said the unrighteous shall not inherit the kingdom of the Most High, right? Read.
Be not deceived.
Be not deceived. Don't be deceived. Read.
Neither fornicators, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor effeminate,
right?
Nor abusers of themselves with mankind,
nor homosexuals, read.
Nor thieves, nor covetous, nor drunkards,
alcoholics,
revilers, nor extortioners, shall inherit the kingdom of the Most High. None
of those that's breaking the laws is going to inherit the kingdom of the Most High, right? Read, but we know this for a fact. This is Paul speaking. So, but you got to keep the law. That's what it's getting into. Nobody that's breaking the law is going to be inherit the kingdom of the Most High. But what? Read on.
And which were some of you, but ye.
He said, and such were some of you. Now we notice a lot of these things that he named: effeminate, abusers of mankind, adulterers, idolaters, fornicators. All these people, there's no sacrifice for that sin, right? All these people, there's no sacrifice for sin. So how are they gonna make it if they did that before, right? Read verse 11 again.
And such were some of you.
And such were some of these people. Such was us. We was these people. So according to the Old Testament, we would have no way of making it, right? But read on.
But ye are washed.
But we are washed clean. How?
But ye are sanctified.
We were sanctified. Read.
But ye are justified in the name of the Most High, in the name of the Mashiach Yahweh Shai, and by the Spirit of our power. We was justified. Remember, we just read. He said, in Galatians 5 and 4, Christ is become of no effect unto you, whosoever of you are justified by the law. But if you accept Yahweh Shah and still keep the law, you will be justified, if that makes sense. Right? Let's grab real quick Acts chapter 13. Acts chapter 13, verse 18. It's the book of Acts, chapter 13. Actually, Slakia 13, verse 38. Acts chapter 13, verse 38. Be it known unto you, therefore, brother, that though this man is preached unto you the forgiveness of sin. Right, his blood, that new covenant,
was the forgiveness of our sins, right? Read on.
And by him all that believe are justified from all things from which ye could not be justified by the law of Moses.
Makes sense. That's no. But yeah, you see how I said it. By him, his blood justifies us by with. I'm gonna read that again. And by him, all that believe are justified from all things from which ye could not be justified by the law of Moses. That's what it's getting into. So you have to have that faith in the Mashiach Yahushua. Have to have that, but you still got to keep the law, statutes, and commandments, right? Romans, real quick, Romans chapter 2. Romans 2:25, and then we're gonna get back Romans 2:25.
The book of Romans.
Again, written by Paul, right?
Romans chapter 2, verse 25. For circumcision verily profited.
But they tell you that if you get circumcised, Christ availeth you nothing, right? It don't profit you nothing. But Paul, the same person that wrote that, he wrote Romans after he wrote that. So what, did he have a change of mind? No. They just don't understand what he in Galatians. Right? He said, Paul, read that again, Slakia.
Romans chapter 2, verse 25. For circumcision verily profited.
Circumcision verily profiteth. Is good. It profits you, read.
If thou keep the whole law.
If thou keep the law. Don't say the whole law, but if thou keep the law. Right? Circumcision verily profit if thou keep the law. If you keep the law, that circumcision is going to keep is good. If you're not keeping the law, the circumcision not helping you anyways because you're still breaking the law. Makes sense. We can read on.
But if thou be a breaker of the law.
If you breaking the law, right? If you're not keeping the law that we was told to keep, read.
Thy circumcision is made uncircumcised.
It's like you was never even circumcised in the first place. Right. So and let's get real quick verse 13 on that too. Yeah, 2:13.
For the hearers of the law are just before the Most High.
For not the hearers of
the law are just before the Most High. But the doers of the law shall be justified.
But he just said, you know what I mean? He just said you're not gonna be justified by the law. But he letting it be known that the doers of the law is gonna be justified. Right? Paul get confusing to some people. You got to keep the law and have that faith. The two go together. Real quick, Romans 3:31. Also,
do we
actually start at 30, 30 and 31.
Deuteronomy.
Romans 3:30 and 31.
30. Romans 3, verse 30.
Come.
Seeing it is one Most High, which shall justify the circumcised by faith.
He's going to justify the circumcision by faith, read.
And the uncircumcision through faith.
So the Most High is going to justify. So then, how he going to justify the circumcision if Christ don't avail him nothing? It don't make sense. He says the Most High is going to justify the circumcision by faith, by their faith, read, and the circumcision through their faith, right? Read on.
Do we then make void the law through faith?
Do we then make void the law through faith? Do we get rid of the law because we have faith? That's a good question, right? Because that's what the Christians will have you think. But what? Or should I say what Paul say? It says, God forbid. No. We don't get rid of the law, right? Read.
We establish the law.
We establish the law. That word, in fact, let me pull that up. That word in the Greek is histemi. Histemi, which means we make it more firm. Pull that up in the Blue Letter Bible. computer going slow. All right, share my screen. Says, do we then make void the law through faith? God forbid. That word, we established that word, histemi. We established G2476, histemi, which means stand, set, establish, stand still, stand by, right? To cause and to make stand, to place, put, set of the Sanhedrin, to place, to make firm, fix, establish, right? To cause a person or thing to keep his or its place, to stand, be kept intact, family, a kingdom, to escape in safety, to establish a thing, every let it stay firm. We are supposed to be keeping that law. Make sense? Calm. All right. Now let's go back to Acts chapter 21, because we know that Acts 15 actually happened before Galatians, before all these epistles going out.
Chapter.
We're going, Acts 21. We're gonna start at 18. I might actually start earlier than that. Give me a sec. Now we're gonna start at. We could start earlier. I'm gonna start at 18 for the sake of time, and I'll give y'all a little breakdown of what's going on, and y'all could go back into it and read it later on. But in Acts 21, during this time, Paul was coming down to keep the feast. He was coming down to keep the feast, and there was people that actually was hearing that they wanted him dead in Jerusalem. So they was telling him, don't go. But he was like, nah, I gotta go. I must keep this feast. I'm gonna go down there. You know what I mean? And they kept saying, yo, don't go. And what we reading right now is when he got there. When he got there, he linked up with the elders, so on and so forth, right? So we're gonna read Acts 21 and 18. This takes place after all the epistles written. I think actually Romans might have been written after this part or during this time, but all other epistles was written before this, right?
Right. And it reads, Acts chapter 21, verse 18. And that day following, Paul went in with us unto James.
Right. So this is Luke speaking. Luke is the one who wrote the book of Acts. He wrote the book of Acts. He wrote the book of Luke. Some Acts.
And all the elders were present.
Uh-huh.
And we had saluted them. He declared particularly what things the Most High wrought among the Gentiles by his ministry.
Right. So he went there, saluted everybody, letting them know what happened. You know what I mean? What's going on with the Gentiles during his ministry, right? But read on.
Verse 19. And when verse
20.
And when they heard it, they glorified the Most High and said unto him, Thou seest, brother, how many thousands of Jews there are which believe, and they are jealous of the Lord.
Right. Now, we got to pay attention to what's being said here. He's over there declaring what happened amongst the Gentiles. And when they heard this, they glorified the Most High and said, see how many thousands of Jews there are which believe. And they are all zealous of the Lord. What does that mean? These Gentiles that he was teaching was all Jews. Not only that, they believe. When they say they believe in Yahushua, and they are all zealous of the law. They all want to keep the law. You feel what I'm saying? That's a beautiful thing. But these are the people that Paul was teaching, and this is what he was teaching the law. You feel what I'm saying? He was teaching Yahushua and the law, bringing the two together. That's what he was doing, right? He says, see how, look, read that again, verse 20. And when they heard it, they glorified the Most High and said unto him, Thou seest, brother, how many thousands of Jews there are which believe, and they are all zealous of the law, right? So read on.
And they are informed of thee. that thou teachest all the Jews which are among the Gentiles to forsake Moses.
So this is what they hearing. After stuff like Corinthians written, after stuff like Galatians written, they hearing that he's teaching against the law. And how he wrote it, it sounds like that sometimes. Sometimes, you know what I mean? But it's like, yo, they hearing that you keep teaching against the law and against Moses, right? Read.
Saying that they ought not to circumcise their children, neither to walk after the custom.
So even back then, they was going through this. This is why Peter had to write what he wrote when he said, "Yo, they wrestling with his epistles as they do the scriptures," because people was hearing this, they reading this, not understanding what Paul was trying to say or where it was coming from, right? So they say, yo, they hearing this, they hearing that you teaching against the laws of Moses. They hearing that you saying don't circumcise your children or to walk after the customs, right? Read on. This is James speaking, right? But read on. No, it's not Luke speaking. This is the elders. Luke was there, but this is the elders speaking.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But read on.
What is it therefore? The multitude must needs come together.
He said the multitude of the needs must come together, right? So how are we going to fix this? Because the elders already know what Galatians was about. They knew that they told them write letters after the council in Jerusalem that was in Acts 15, right? So he said that the multitude of the needs must come together. Read.
For they will hear that thou art come. Do therefore this that we say to thee. We have 4 men which have vow on them.
There's 4 men that have vow on them, right? The Nazarite vow, right? Read on.
Them take and purify thyself with them, and be at charges with them, and they may shave their heads, and all may know that those things whereof they were informed concerning thee are nothing. Thou also walkest orderly and keepest the law.
See, I understand what's going on here. Paul actually had a vow on him. When you read in Acts 18, it lets you know that he had a vow on him, and his vow was up while he was still out of Jerusalem, and he wound up cutting his hair already. So when he came back, they saying, yo, listen, we got 4 men that got a vow. They need to cut anything about the Lord of Nazarite. You just go right into the what's that? Number 6, I want to say. I believe it's in number 6, but the Lord of Nazarite. And y'all go into it. When the vow is over, you're supposed to shave your head and then offer a sacrifice. So right now, the elders is telling him to go sacrifice, which is something that people try to say was done away with when Yahushua died. No, they were still sacrificing. James is here. James, the brother of Christ, is here saying the same exact thing. Y'all go. They got the Nazarite vow is over. Y'all go there. You take them to they're sacrificing. Now everybody's gonna feel like what they heard was nothing. That he's not teaching that. Let's read that again. Verse 24.
Them take and purify thyself with them, and be at charges with them, that they may shave their heads, and all may know that those things whereof they were informed concerning thee are nothing.
So that they'll know that those things, what did they hear? That he was teaching against circumcision, that he's teaching against Moses, that he was teaching against what the ancestors were saying. What did James say? That everything that they heard is nothing, meaning what? It's not true. So what they think Galatians is saying is not what he's saying. That all those things are not true, but what? Read on.
But that thou thyself also walkest orderly.
That you yourself also keep the law, right? Read.
And keepest the law.
Yeah, you walk orderly and keepeth the law. You keep all the law. And you teach to keep the law. You feel what I'm saying?
As touching the Gentiles believe.
All those new people, the same thing that he said in Acts 15, he's gonna say the same thing again, right? Read.
We have written and concluded that they observe no such thing, save only that they keep themselves from things offered to idols, and from strangle and fornication. Right.
So we letting them know, like, yo, this is what y'all gonna do when y'all first come in. This is what we teach them right away. You know what I mean? The same exact thing, right? Read on.
Paul took them in, and the next day purified himself with them, entering into the temple to signify the accomplishment of the days of purification, until that an offering should be offered for every one of them.
Right, and that's in Numbers 6. I do got that written down here. That's in Numbers 6 when they finished the vow. That's from Numbers 6, 13 and 21, right? Read on.
And when the 7 days were almost ended, the Jews which also were of Asia, when they saw him in the temple, stirred up all the people and laid hands on him.
Y'all know what they talking about when they say Asia?
Asia.
Is that considered Asia? I think that is considered Asia Minor. It's definitely not China in all them places. It's the same place that he was at, Galatia, Turkey. That's Asia. That's what he's talking about. So the same Jews that was over there causing problems is the same Jews that came over here and seen them. You know what I mean? Same ones, right? He said, look, and when the 7 days were almost ended, the Jews which were of Asia, when they saw him, because remember, he's still in Jerusalem, they came down for the feast, right? The Jews which were in Asia, when they saw him in the temple, stirred up all the people, the same way they did back in Antioch and Lystra and all these places, and laid hands on him, right? Because they tried to stone him before. They did stone him before, right? But we don't.
Verse 28, Acts 21, verse 28. Crying out, men of Israel, help. This is the man that teaches all men everywhere against the people and the law.
So you hear what they're saying, right? Mm-hmm. They're saying he's teaching now. The elders they understood that he wasn't teaching against that. But these people is claiming that he's teaching against the law, right? Read that again.
Acts 21, 28. Crying out, men of Israel, help. This is the man that teaches all men everywhere against the people and the law in this place. And further brought Greeks also into the temple and have polluted this holy place.
Right. Now, read on.
For they have seen before with him in the city of Trophimus and Ephesian,
right? Read.
Whom they suppose that Paul had brought into the people.
Into the temple. They assumed that he brought him to the temple, but he didn't. Right. But here's the thing. Now it says what their thing against him is that he's teaching against the law and the people, right? And the place. And that's what they're saying. That's their argument against him, right? Read on.
Right. And all the city was moved. And the people ran together and they took Paul and drew him out of the temple. And forthwith the doors were shut. And they went about to kill him. Tidings came unto the chief captain, the band, that all Jerusalem was in uproar. Right. So news came. Tidings being news. Right. So they was ready to kill him. They was ready to stone Paul after this. They didn't give him no type of trial or nothing like that. They was ready to stone him, saying he was teaching against the law. But the Tidings news came to the chief of the captains because the Romans was running everything. So those were the police at the time. So that's what it came to, right? But read on. Who immediately took soldiers and centurions and ran down unto them. And when they saw the chief captain and the soldiers, they left beating of Paul. They was beating Paul down over there. But the police stopped it. They came in there, you see this ruckus going on. Police stopped it like, yo, what's going on, right? Yeah. We could jump down real quick. We want to try to make this as quick as possible. Jump down, yeah. Come. Acts 21:37. And as Paul was to be led into the castle, he said unto the chief captain, may I speak unto thee? Who said, can thou speak Greek? Yeah, so they were shocked that he was able to even speak Greek. Remember, Paul was considered a Roman citizen because he was born in Tarshish. That's where he's from, which was a Roman area, right? So he said, it was a Roman/Greek area. So that's where he was born. And he so they was like, yo, they surprised that he could even speak Greek because he was already speaking Hebrew there, right? But read on. Are not which before these days made us an uproar and led us out into the wilderness, 4,000 men that were murdered.
So they like your own. We already know Egyptians are black people, but showing what color Paul was. You know what I mean? He was a man of color. And he said, "Yo, they got him confused. Yo, aren't you the Egyptian that?" And you could actually read about this story. That Egyptian, I believe in Josephus, it talks about him. The Egyptian that led 4,000 people that was murderers right into the wilderness. But you can read on.
But Paul said, I am a man which am a Jew of Tarsus.
Right, he's a Jew of Tarsus. He was born in Tarsus. Right, read.
A city in Cilicia. A citizen of no mean city.
Right, he is a Jew that was born in another place other than Israel. Right.
And I beseech thee, suffer me to speak unto the people. And when he had given him what?
License.
Paul stood up on the stairs and unto the people. And when there was made a great silence, he spoke unto them in the Hebrew tongue.
Showing what we were speaking at that time. A lot of people try to say we were speaking Aramaic. No, we was actually speaking Hebrew. What Christ spoke was Hebrew. You feel what I'm saying? He spoke to them in the Hebrew tongue, right? We're gonna skip down a little more. Let's go to let's jump down to 25, verse 25.
This is Acts 22 now, verse 25. And as they bound him with thongs, Paul said unto the centurion that stood by, is it lawful for you to scourge a man that is a Roman and uncondemned?
Right, because he didn't go through the trial process. So now they trying to beat on him, and he's like, yo, the centurion, he let him be known, like, yo, I'm from Tarsus. This is where I'm from. I'm considered a Roman, even though he's an Israelite. I'm considered a Roman. Is it lawful for them to beat a Roman citizen? Same way, for instance, you go to other countries, they can't do certain things to you because you're considered an American citizen. You feel what I'm saying? If you're an American citizen, they're going to have to treat you a little differently than you treat everybody else.
To the
NMC, right.
United States of America.
Right. Same thing with over here. If you got diplomatic immunity, certain things, they'll let you rock with a lot of stuff. Right. But you read on.
Verse 26, Acts 22:26. When the centurion heard that, he went and told the chief captain, saying, take heed, thou doest, for this man is a Roman.
Right. So they can't just put him to death now. Right. Read on.
Then the chief captain came and said unto him, tell me, art thou a Roman? He said, yeah. And the chief captain,
he used that. He an Israelite. He used that. I'm a Roman. Yeah. You know what I mean? You know.
And when the chief captain answered, with a great sum obtained, I this freedom. And Paul said, but I was freeborn.
Now let's get on that. We're gonna jump to over chapter 24 because this is a long story going into, but we're gonna get everything settled. Okay. Chapter 24. You can start at. Let's start at 1. We're gonna start at 1 and then we jump down a little bit.
Chapter 1 and 24.
No, chapter 24, verse 1. We're in
Acts chapter 24, verse 1. And after 5 days, Ananias, the high priest, descended with the elders, with certain orator named Tertullus, who informed the governor against Paul.
Now jump to 5 real quick.
For we have found this man a pestilent fellow, and a mower of seduction among all the Jews throughout the world, and ringleader of the sect of the Nazarene.
Right. So they saying, yo, he's a pestilence. He's a ringleader of the sect called the Nazarenes, meaning it seems like it's a gang. He's starting problems, a mover of sedition, meaning like he bringing problems amongst the people of Israel, right? Let's jump down to verse 10.
Then Paul, after the governor had beckoned unto him to speak, answered, for as much as I know
that thou hast been of many years a judge, a judge unto this nation. I do the more cheerfully answered for myself.
Right. So now Paul's going to speak and answer for himself. Right. Now we got to remember all the charges that they put on him. What was the main thing? Teaching against the Lord. Right. So what happened? Read on. This is what Paul's saying.
Because that thou mayest understand that there are yet but 12 days since I went up to Jerusalem to worship.
Yep, there's 12 days. This is a 12-day period since he had came down. Right, read.
And they neither found me in the temple disputing with any man.
Right, so I wasn't causing no sedition. Right, I wasn't disputing with no man. Read.
Neither raising up the people. Neither in the synagogues nor in the city.
I wasn't doing that in the synagogues or the city. I was not causing no problems. Right, read.
Neither can they prove these things wherewith they now accuse me.
They can't prove none of the stuff they're accusing me of. You saying, yo, they're accusing me of teaching against the Lord. They can't prove that I'm not doing that. If you say I'm not, you can't prove it. I ain't do that. That's what he's saying. I did not do that. He told the high priestess if he did, then he would be lying to the high priest, which is automatic sin. You know what I mean? But he said, neither can they prove whereof they now accuse me. Right? Read on.
But this I confess unto thee, that after the way which they call heresy, so worship I the Most High, my fathers, believing all things that are written in the law and in the prophets.
He said, believing all things, meaning he kept all the law. He believed all the law. He's not teaching against it. Right? Read on.
And have hope toward the Most High, which they themselves also allow, that there shall be a resurrection of the dead, both of the just and unjust.
Right. So that's what he's teaching. That's what he's teaching. Everything making sense? Right. So Paul, out of Paul's own mouth, he wasn't teaching against circumcision or the law. Right. Galatians was a response to Acts 15, and when you read it in totality, it's not saying don't get circumcised. When you understand what's actually going into. You know what I'm saying? That makes sense? Y'all all understand that now? Now, I definitely suggest all y'all read everything and keep these in mind as y'all. You know what I'm saying? Is there anything else? We could jump down real quick. Jump down to chapter 25 and verse 8. Actually, you start at verse 6.
25 verse 6. And when he had tarried among them more than 10 days, he went down to Caesarea. And the next day, sitting on the judgment seat, commanded Paul to be brought.
Right now, this is Festus. Right now, it's talking about he went and commanded Paul to be brought to him. Right, read on.
And when he was come, the Jews which came down from Jerusalem stood round about and laid many and grievous complaints against Paul, which they could not prove.
Yeah, they saying, oh, he's teaching against the law. They cannot prove that. Right? He's saying himself he wasn't teaching against that, right? But read on.
While he answered for himself, neither against the law of Jews, neither against the temple, nor against Caesar, and I have offended anything at all.
Again, Paul out of his own mouth. I did not teach that. I did not teach none of that, right? And I'm gonna leave that at that. We already got going on almost 2 hours, right? But any questions? No questions? Everything makes sense.
You started at 1, didn't you?
Huh?
You started at 1, right?
What you mean?
Oh, no, it's 3, right?
Oh yeah. I don't know when it's 3 now. It's like I got like an hour, 49 minutes in. But so with that, we give all praise, honor, and glory to the Most High. If you got any questions, leave it in the comments. And shalom.